Here is what not many people would know about our life. The tremendous responsibility that lies on our shoulders when we deal with the heart, and the margin of error is so little. The rush that the adrenaline rush that we get when things don't go exactly the way you plan, and the anguish and the frustrations that I feel, when sometimes, rarely though, we lose someone after all the efforts that we put in. So, and by the way, when we cut the heart open during an open heart operation, we really don't see those romantic expressions of the soul or the love or the sort that a lot of these poets and writers have been writing about in the historical times. But this is a story that people don't see, that our life is not that glamorous. And actually, there is something else that you haven't seen and heard. And here is a story that I'm going to share today with you and take you to a little different story that we want to deal with, and we often do. I was chief of the Gangalal National Heart Hospital several years ago. And I was sitting in my office, and one day I was looking out of the office window, and I saw that a poor young lady walked from the gates of the hospital and sat in the middle of a lawn. This was not a typical patient that we would see. And I asked my assistant, Ram, and told him, why don't you go find out? This is not usual. He went out and came back shortly and told me, sir, this lady is looking for Gangalal Koirala. Well, Gangalal was the hospital's name, and Koirala is my name. And so clearly mixed up. And you could figure that out easily, that this lady needs all the help and support to take her through the systems of the hospital and provide whatever care that she needed. So we did. We worked her up. We found out that she needed an operation. We changed the valve in her. We had to mobilize funds for the operations cost and the disposables and the implantable valve. And the operation went well. We were about to discharge her, and just before the discharge, we realized that she didn't have anything to pay for the flight and to get some money to go back home. Actually, she hailed from a district of Humla. Many of you know that Humla still does not have road access. And this lady had to walk 1.5 full day up from the last leg of the helicopter flight, or the twin otter that could go to Humla capital. And then she had to walk at least another 1.5 days to get to her home. So again, we kind of asked for help from some good-hearted souls and friends, bought a ticket for her, and gave some extra money so that she could go back home. We felt pretty accomplished, and we got on with our regular work, like any other day. About a year later, this lady comes back, and this time she knows where to go and find me. She comes to my office and approaches me. I generally don't sit in the office most of the time, but it happened that I was there. I was startled to see, after this whole year she lived in the most remote part of Nepal, she didn't go for follow-up anywhere, which we had advised to, for a regular checkup of the heart. And I asked her, how did you come? And she said, in a very far western colloquial Nepali language, if you can understand that, Pato bechikan aya hu hazur. In Nepali, that's the western colloquial language. She told that we sold the very piece of land that we had to be able to buy for the ticket and get to Kathmandu to be checked up. I was shocked. We knew that there are difficulties for people to get to Kathmandu, but it was a very striking incident with this little poor woman that I had to keep thinking about, what are we doing here? The storm that this incident with this little woman generated in my brain was much more stronger than any of the thought-provoking lectures that I have ever attended in my life. That evening, I was thinking, why this one incident of yet another patient, bothered me so much? Why did I get connected to this so much? I kept thinking, and I again realized and remembered my early childhood days. 4 some decades ago, I was a young little chap in the village of Palpa, just completed my SLC, and was looking for, further +2 or certificate level studies that time. My father actually had to sell a piece of land to be able to send me to Kathmandu for education. So I kept thinking, how long our people would have to sell their properties and assets, lands, to be able to go for a treatment, or for study, or for business, and so on. Something really not right here, and we need to change that. Well, you keep talking about the general life, but the health sector is the hardest hit and most glaring among all these sectors that we struggle with. I can also tell you that many of the non-communicable diseases, which we think are diseases of the rich, affect the poor. The congenital heart disease, the disease that come from birth, the rheumatic heart disease that comes just from the sore throat, if not treated in time, the lung diseases, the smoke-related problems, and many of the cancers affect the poor more than the well-offs. And in fact, these diseases hit them harder and make them poorer. And then there is this vicious cycle, and we get to deal with this on an everyday basis. You deal with the medicine, but at the same time, you see the problems beyond medicine. And there are many other conditions apart from this that we have not been able to set these services right. So this kept us provoking to think about how to help this situation and change it a little bit in our health system. So with our group at the Gangalal Heart Hospital, with the support of the government and many stakeholders, we could convince the policymakers at that time, the politicians, to specifically draft programs on cardiovascular disease and policies on cardiovascular disease that are particularly focused on poor. In fact, we could make all the operations and interventions and treatment for all the children free of cost in this country, in the public sector. And they don't pay now, nothing. That's same with many of the adult other conditions. And there are a lot of other catastrophic illnesses, what we call, they are paid by the government. And this example was taken very positively, and the most prestigious medical journal in the world, called Lancet, highlighted the success that one of the poorest countries in the world, could set up a program for the poor that is so successful. And this was an achievement for us. And looks like the country can afford if you set the system right. It doesn't seem like overwhelmingly expensive because the cost of the operation in Nepal is relatively cheap. And this has been highlighted as the most effective and productive, cost-effective procedure, although pretty standard by any international standards. So this was an achievement, but we realized that this is only one step, because this is only one part of the disease process that affects our population, and most disadvantaged among them are the poorest ones, because the diseases hit them hard, they make them poorer. And the most vulnerable group among this category of patients are the children. They get this disease by no fault of their own, and they are very vulnerable. They need very specific type of care, and they deserve a special attention in our society and everywhere in the world. So when I look back at my career, of 25 years plus of cardiac surgery in this country. You know, the greatest rush in my brain, or the adrenaline rush that I get, is not just when I fix a heart by my own hands in the operating room. And mind you, that's a great satisfaction when you fix a heart and get the person going, fix him, and he goes back healthy. It's a great feeling. But that's not the greatest adrenaline rush that I get. The greatest rush I get when I can be a voice of those who don't have voice, can be the help of those who don't have help by themselves, and can give hopes to them, and reach out to those who cannot travel from all these nooks and corners of the country through these tortuous routes with no means to buy tickets to our side. So there is a fundamental gap in our health system, that we want these people to come to us rather than we reaching out to them. And I think there is a lot to do for us in terms of setting the things up in such a way that we reach out to them rather than asking them to find the most tortuous ways to their so-called saviors. So with this, I again repeat, I've been working in this field for more than 2 decades, and this feeling is the driving force that I have for myself, and this will continue to drive my work further. Now on, the goal that I would take up will be child health. The big vision is that no child in this country shall be denied of treatment because of poverty. This is an ambitious goal. No one person can do this alone. But this is a vision worth dedicating one's future to. So I invite you all, and through this program, anyone who watches this, give it a thought. It's possible. If we all come together, it's possible that our children do not die prematurely because of any avoidable disease condition. Thank you very much.